A day after the federal government confirmed the first case of coronavirus in the country, the Senate expressed dissatisfaction with the federal government's efforts at ensuring that coronavirus is prevented from getting into the country.
To ensure that they contain the spread.
At plenary session on Thursday, February 27th, the federal lawmaker, Senator Robert Bouroufis, told the Senate that the arrangements at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport to ensure that coronavirus does not get into the country is severely lacking. He wants the authorities to properly screen visitors coming into the country.
When we landed in South Africa, we were not allowed to leave the aircraft for a good 30 minutes. Officers of the medical corps of the South African Army came into the aircraft and screened everybody before we were allowed out of this aircraft. When I arrived yesterday at the Nnamdi Azikiwe Airport, there was no screening. All we were given is a sheet of paper to indicate whether we were sick, whether we had been to one country or the other, and how we'll be contacted in emergency. What are you contacted in emergency? How do you train me? How do you know whether I fall sick after I left the airport? So this is very frightening, Mr. President and the Secretary and Senators. Very frightening. And I think something has to be done to ensure that we do not give way to a situation which we will not be able to control. Countries that have adequate medical facilities are working hard to ensure that they contain the spread of this pandemic coronavirus.
The Senate consequently mandated its Committee on Primary Health Care and Health to work directly with the Ministry of Health to ensure thorough screening of travelers at all entry points.
Every country in the world tries to ensure that if it has coronavirus, it limits it to those that are affected, that it doesn't go beyond those that are affected. And if it doesn't, every country tries to ensure that it doesn't cross to its border. While the Federal Ministry of Health and the associated agencies may be doing their best, I think at the moment with this kind of explanation, this best is not good enough. And we shouldn't take anything for granted. We are a prayerful nation, but when we pray, we should walk the prayer. We are not hoping, but we must be prepared. We must take all the necessary measures at our ports, airports, seaports. People who are coming back to Nigeria, especially from areas that we have been identified to have this, in fact, should be screened. This is the least we can do. But I want to urge the committees on primary health care and health to engage with the Federal Ministry of Health once again. We want to see every possible effort done at our airports, at our seaports, that people are screened when they come into our country.
The House of Representatives took some key positions and worked on some legislations during the week, one of which is a bill listed for second reading, which seeks to alter the Constitution to provide immunity for presiding officers of the National Assembly. This bill is raising eyebrows by some observers of Parliament who are questioning the necessity and timing. On Tuesday, February 25th, a bill was listed for second reading, which seeks to alter the Constitution to provide immunity for presiding officers of legislative houses.
I rise to move a bill for an act to alter Section 308 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, to extend immunity to cover presiding officers of legislative institutions and for related matters.
If the bill seeks to confer immunity on subsequent presiding officers after this assembly, then perhaps I may preside. But I would suggest I would suggest, so that there are no appearances of impropriety, that even if the bill does not have a commencement day, a futuristic commencement date, I believe you should put a commencement date of 2023, so that I am not conferred with any kind of immunity.
While some lawmakers support the move, others condemn the timing and question its relevance.
We do not need any immunity now. I am already personally against the immunity currently enjoyed by the president and the governors.
At this time in our nation, what is important is the provision of security to our people.
I may agree with you, this might be exceptionally different, coming maybe at a wrong time, when there are more other important things to address than this. But we must also be careful not to set a precedent to attend to our lawful duty, discuss and legislate on matters brought before us on their merit, simply because, we are shy, these things affect us, or it involves one of us or presiding officer. I do respect you, sir, for what you have offered yourself to be, that you may not be able to preside over this bill because you are now a sitting presiding officer. You cannot be a judge against us. You cannot be a judge in your own case. Agreed. You are maybe saying that because you feel you have no skeleton in your cupboard. But the fact still remains. The fact still remains that whatever is good for the goose is also good for the gander.
The essence of this bill is to guide against unnecessary distraction and intimidation. You cannot argue that because I am involved, I cannot protect myself. This bill is essentially aimed at securing the institution of the National Assembly. It is not a bill targeted at protecting an individual. It is a bill to safeguard the interest and the sanctity of the institution of the National Assembly. Therefore, I urge all honorable colleagues to support this bill wholeheartedly so that it passes. It is a constitutional amendment. It doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop here. After us, it will still go to the 36 states of the Federation.
You're most welcome.
The House of Representatives is urging the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, to publish the names and pictures of convicted traffickers. This is part of the resolution of the House, following a motion on the need to investigate sex slavery, which Nigerian women are subjected to.
Why it is important that
the motion, which was sponsored by 8 lawmakers, alleges that between 20,000 to 30,000 Nigerian girls are sex slaves in other countries, with 50 additional girls being added to the list every day. Members of the House of Representatives are also alarmed at the large number of out-of-school children in the country. A survey conducted by the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, indicates that the population of out-of-school children in Nigeria is 13.2 million, or the data of 10.2 million, as stated by the Minister for Education.
we must encourage.
For the lawmakers, some of these children who are meant to be in school, especially girls, are lured out of the country and trafficked for money.
Yet we have painted the picture that things are so bad in the country that people go out of Nigeria thinking that life outside Nigeria, especially in West Africa, is better than in Nigeria. And there's nowhere that you go that things are actually better than we have in Nigeria. And look at the situation that we have today. A lot of the young girls, some that are kidnapped in uniform, that are in Mali, are operating. If you Google, you see the pictures of where they are living in. It's where not even your dog, you are allowed to live in such type of places. And they are forced to sleep with 20, 30 people in a day to be able to pay.
If you look at the value chain of this sex slavery, it begins from homes. I do not want to get involved in mentioning geographical jurisdictions where this thing is somehow almost being legitimized. So there is need for advocacy, there is need for our religious institutions to get involved into this, and also the political will of leaders that are involved in dealing with affairs of the public. So it is a collective responsibility of all sectors of governance in order to address this problem.
We need to actually do a lot of reorientation, because most of the people who are actually getting involved in this trade, like we rightly said, were actually deceived into it. So I think NAPTIC, the agency, the diaspora agency should do a lot of reorientation for our people, for the young girls especially, and in the rural areas also, because these are the areas where they recruit most of these people. They do have means of communication that gives them information as goes within the other areas within the country.
The UNODC reports that while human trafficking cuts across gender, young women and girls from Nigeria are particularly vulnerable as they are trafficked to other African countries, Europe, or the Middle East, where they are forced into sex work. The lawmakers resolved that NAPTIP should publish the names and pictures of convicted traffickers and mandates the House Committee on Human Rights to conduct investigations into all aspects of sex slavery, recommend appropriate budgeting and legislative measures, including sanctions and cooperation with fellow African countries to put an end to the menace.
Honorable colleagues,
Following recent meetings between lawmakers and the service chiefs, a bill for special funding for the military, aside the annual budgetary provision, is up for debate.
Nigeria is at war at the moment, but we don't have a budget that can finance a war. What we have at the moment, Mr. Speaker, is an envelope-based budget that cannot prosecute this war that we're in.
Even though I may not agree that we are at war, but I know that we are suffering from serious insecurity issues that needs funding. This particular fund is not going to be a conduit pipe for anybody.
I believe every single member in this chamber, if we are really serious, then we should donate a percentage of our salaries to the armed forces.
Yes.
For some of the lawmakers, there are still unanswered questions.
I want to find out, has the army cried out to say that the information they have been giving to Nigeria are lies? We need to know. Because if we are saying we need a special funding for the war, the army is telling us that they have won, that it's just a matter of time they have been uprooted. And now we are giving them special funding. My fear is that even if that special funding comes, are they going to account for it?
The speaker goes on the defensive.
Honorable Shaulu is disclosing the numerical strength of our army and our police. And these are things that should not be disclosed to the public and to the enemies.
The bill eventually scales second reading. The Senate President Ahmed Lawan was in Yobe State recently, where he advocated for government MDAs and the private sector to tap into the tourism potentials in the country, which he says will go a long way in boosting revenue and wealth creation. Senate President Ahmed Lawan has urged ministries and agencies of government, as well as corporate bodies, to tap into the tourism drive of the federal government, which is a sure way of boosting revenue in the country. He was speaking during the Mayu Ganja Fishing and Cultural Festival. The Fishing and Cultural Festival is an annual festival by the natives of Bade Emirates in Yobe State, which commenced in 1956. As a tradition, a hippopotamus would be hunted before the fishing festival begins, which includes spear throwing, swimming, and display of boating techniques. The practice died down due to extinction of the hippos in the area following climate change and was last celebrated in 2004 until this year, 2020.
This is one particular event that we have all dreamt of for a long time, that we need to see a revitalization, a resuscitation of this our cultural fishing festival, and of course reviving our culture as well. But I have also started speaking with some government agencies already to come into participation in this activity. So by next year, we are going to see more government agencies coming, foreign government agencies coming to support us by the grace of God.
Yobe State Governor Mai Malabuni, who believes the festival will serve as a tourist destination, directed the rehabilitation of all the facilities at the site to ensure adequate preparation for the future events.
The Bode Culture and Fishing Festival is a glorious art form that not only brings people together, but helps raise the profile of our state as a tourism destination. It's a culture we are so very proud of. As you are aware, our state is blessed with many river channels that are the source of varieties of fish in commercial quantities. And fish is now a sought-after healthy source of protein that many people are turning to. This being the case, I believe the government and people of every state have a greater chance to increase our revenue flows, both at the public and individual levels, if we continue to improve the culture and business of catching, processing, and selling of fish across the country.